Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today called The 7 Keys to Manifesting Through Your Chakras. How to activate your energy body to create the life, relationships, and world you desire. My name is Stephen Dinan, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network, and I'm really delighted to be hosting today with one of my favorite people. Her name is Anodea Judith, and she's the #1 best-selling expert on the chakra system. Her books and media products have sold nearly 1 million copies around the world, and she's really become one of the most influential people in bridging East and West with a more holistic understanding of how do we activate our full potential by activating all of our energy centers. She's also applied this work in broader context as a kind of a philosopher of the evolution of culture. And what's really great about the work with chakras is it's very practical, really has a big impact, and results in a very integrated approach to our development and ultimately our action in the world, which is what we're going to focus on more today. So with that said, just a warm welcome and thank you to Anodea Judith. Welcome.
Thank you, Stephen. Always delightful to be with you.
Great. Well, we're going to have this hour with Anodea, and I want to let everyone know right up front that this is not the end of the line. We actually have a full program coming up with it we'll talk about towards the end of today's call. So, Anodea, let's begin with a little bit of your backstory, your personal backstory. So you've obviously devoted your life to the chakras and manifesting a lot of amazing things from this. How did you get into the chakra work, and how has it been helpful for you to manifest your whole body of work?
Well, I got into yoga around 1975, and at that time I was reading everything I could on metaphysics, and it was in a book by Ram Dass that I discovered the word chakra. And as soon as I read it, this shot of energy went through my whole body. It was like I knew, it was like reading something that was familiar, even though I'd never heard the word before. And as I read on and started to do a little research, all the discussions about, oh, lower chakras, bad, evil, the whole point is to get into higher consciousness. I thought, you know, intrinsically, there's something wrong there. Yes, higher consciousness is a worthy pursuit, but it doesn't mean the lower chakras are evil or bad. Why would we have a system of 7 chakras if, you know, only 3 or 4 of them were worth anything? So I said, wait a minute. And I started to do research, and I realized that that was just a kind of modern interpretation that didn't really hold with the ancient texts. They talked about a downward current of consciousness where everything begins in consciousness and then gets denser and denser until it manifests in the physical plane.
In retrospect, it seems almost like an obvious recognition, but because we are more into embodiment, but there was such a strong impulse in traditional systems to kind of ascend out of the body. And so this sounds like with energy systems, we got the same thing. We're like, oh, the lower is bad. We just want to ascend into the higher. But that probably created a lot of really ungrounded people who maybe, you know, you see this in our whole movement, aren't particularly strong at manifesting.
Exactly. I see it all the time. And I teach in metaphysical centers across the world. And, you know, those are often the people that don't have it real grounded in a lot of ideals, but how do they put the legs underneath them?
Great. Well, I think that's part of what the real value of this work is that we do have these ideals, which are important, and there's recognitions of oneness and collaboration, global unity, and it's so important. And we've got to get real about how do we make the projects and businesses and books and everything that helps to shift the culture to this new pattern, which I know is really ultimately your goal, is to create heaven on earth.
That's my passion. That's my secret agenda, you know, to create heaven on earth. And nobody can do that alone. We need a lot of people that know how to manifest to contribute their part and to believe that they can, and to work together and create a world that we know in our hearts is possible.
Well, I know that's the ultimate mission behind your upcoming program, Manifesting Through the Chakras, which we'll share a little bit more about later. So, but let's get the high level now. So it's important to first of all value all the different 7 chakras. So maybe if you could just do a brief tour of them and what each of their function is that we can honor, and then we can talk a little bit how we can orient that to manifestation.
Yeah, so let me begin by talking about the 2 currents, the upward and the downward, because most people are familiar with the chakra system from the bottom-up current. And the chakras are coordinated to sacred archetypal elements: earth, water, fire, air, sound, light, and consciousness. And you notice as I say those, they go from a fixed form like earth to something freer and water, to fire, which is expansive, to air, which is invisible, to sound, which can travel, many, many miles, to light that can travel even farther, to consciousness that is everywhere at once. So we call that the liberating current. And we get freer and freer with each step. And that's an important part of the process. There's plenty of people manifesting who are not particularly cultivating higher consciousness. Mm-hmm. So, we want that current to take us up to the higher realms and be able to connect with guidance, with spirit, with our higher self, if you will, but then to turn it around in the current of manifestation, which begins in the seventh chakra, which is consciousness itself. How do we connect to the field of information, to, you could call it divine mind, guidance, higher self? How do we connect to that, find our life purpose, and then bring it into a vision? That's sixth chakra. It's the element light. And so this says, what do we see? But not only what does our intuition say, but what's the vision for your life? What's the vision for what you want to create? I'm sure when you started Shift Network, it started with a vision.
Indeed, it took quite a while just in the visionary state too.
Yeah, it was a lot of time. I knew you then, and you were in the visionary state, but you've had to manifest it. Mm-hmm. But it starts with, what do I want to do for the world? What's my life purpose? And I see the vision as the vehicle we take in order to fulfill our purpose. Mm-hmm. So if your purpose is to make people laugh, your vision might be to be a stand-up comedian, or it might be to be a clown for children's parties. They're vehicles. So the vision takes us to our goal, but in order to achieve that, we have to be able to talk about it. And that's the throat chakra, that's communication. So how do I communicate my vision to other people that gets them enrolled, that gets them excited, gets them to understand? If I want to build a house, I go to an architect and I've got to tell the architect what I see up in my head and my imagination, so that the architect can, through communication, start to bring it into detail. And of course, as soon as we communicate, we're coming down into the heart chakra, we're communicating to someone. We're in relationship with that person, at least on those moments that we're communicating. And so we look at, what kind of relationships do you need to manifest your vision? Do you need a graphic designer? Do you need a web designer? Do you need a mentor or a coach or a personal trainer, or a therapist, or a investment banker?
All of the above for some visions.
Yeah, all of the above. So by naming those, we start to look at, how do we find those relationships in our life, and how do we really enroll those relationships in our vision and treat people with love and respect in order to get the highest from them. And then, of course, we come down to where the rubber starts to meet the road. Third chakra is power and will. And so I say here, power produces. It's not just thinking your way to success. That's part of it. You start there. You have to think about it before you can create it. But there's things you have to do. If you want to lose weight, you got to get up in the morning and go to the gym. If you want to manifest something, you've got to make your cold calls, or you've got to do your business plan. These are the things we actually have to do. And it's where a lot of people get stuck. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do that. I don't want to call up somebody I don't know. I don't want to.
Some approaches to manifestation kind of emphasize, it's all about vision and attracting it through magnetically, but it doesn't actually work for most people.
Not unless you get up and do things. And then a lot of people don't know what to do because they haven't made a plan. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be able to prioritize the plan and say, okay, on Wednesday I do this, and on Friday I do that, and 2 months from now I'll be ready to do this, once I get this in place. So that's all the work of igniting your will and moving it forward. And then you come into the fun part, second chakra, which is pleasure. And we look at, how do you make what you're doing fun? If you're not enjoying it, nobody else will. And so I love to make my workshops, full of fun and humor and lively exercises where people are engaging with each other. And when people are having fun, the creativity is flowing. And I actually think of the law of attraction as people are attracted to what is beautiful, what is enjoyable, what is pleasurable. And so we employ the law of attraction by making things attractive. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a no-brainer, I think. And then finally, we come down to the first chakra, which is the manifested plane of Earth. What are the nuts and bolts? The Earth plane is very exacting. So how do we bring that into the condensation of an actual finished product where, we've got a book in our hand, we've got a show on the stage, we have a business, we have clients coming in, we have customers buying our product, we have the partner we were looking for. It depends on what you want to manifest, but that's the finished form.
So the chakras really provide kind of a map for what are the steps that we need to engage and in the right order.
Yes, and they provide a very practical step-by-step plan that if you follow this, you're going to manifest whatever you want if you do all the steps. Trouble is a lot of people want to skip a step.
And so that's a good thing to be aware of, is like, where is it that we might have a resistance or a blockage to, like, oh, I'm not sure about that chakra, or I feel a little uncomfortable with enrollment, for instance, and being able to speak your vision. If you don't speak your vision, people can't get excited by it.
Exactly. And some of the blocks that people have in the throat chakra is they have an inner critic says, well, who are you to do this? And who's gonna want to talk to you? And you messed up things before. What makes you think you can do this? So there's a lot of self-doubt that holds us back in clearly communicating our vision.
And you might have, so every chakra might have its own little tweaks or blockages. So like, what might be something that happens in the sixth chakra that could be a barrier to getting the vision?
Well, as soon as we look at what we want to create, we see all the obstacles in the way. If I want to build a house on top of a hill and I look at the building site, I go, well, there's rocks and trees there. I mean, it's the first thing I'm going to see. So when we look at, we say, oh, well, this costs more money than I'm going to have, and this takes more time than I have. And so the blockage there is that we get stuck on the obstacles. Now, I don't treat obstacles as unreal. They're very real. If you've got, trees on your building site, you got to do something with them. They're not going to, you can't wish them away. But most people focus more on the obstacles than what they want to create. Mm-hmm. The difference between people who manifest and people who don't is people who don't get stuck on the obstacles. They get stopped by them. People who manifest say, okay, this is just an obstacle that has to be handled. What's the right tool to handle that obstacle? And I'm sure you know yourself, in creating something as large as the Shift Network, you've had to face many obstacles along the way.
I mean, every day. Every day there's another obstacle. And I just kind of approach it all as curriculum at this point. It's like every obstacle also forces you to grow and develop in some way too.
That's precisely the point. So obstacles can be stepping stones, and they are there to elicit from you something that you might not have been developing, something that has to come online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, let's talk about, so what are some of the practices that you can do to optimize your energy system, so to kind of start to coalesce this step-by-step process?
Well, the first one is just finding your alignment through your central core. I call that the I, the capital letter I, that runs up and down. Just like we made the I in the third grade with a straight line, a little hat at the top, a little foot at the bottom. Well, the I is what creates. The person inside you is what is creating. But we create that with help from spirit. We co-create, and we co-create with other people. So the first thing is to clear that central channel, because when the spine is straight and the central channel is pushing up to heaven and pulling down to earth, we're making the most efficient line of action between the mind and the body, between heaven and earth, between spirit and matter. So the first thing is that we connect up and we open this interior channel so that we have some room inside to work. and move out some of the blockages and make room. So I've got room in my heart for these relationships. I've got room to listen to feedback. I've got room to imagine something different. So creating space in our life, aligning the body. There's yoga practices, there's breathing practices, there's journal practices. There's many things that start to cultivate this downward current.
Great. And so there's, you mentioned that there's some blocks internally. So a lot of times there's the internal resistance and energetic resistance. So maybe speak a little bit to not just an outer obstacle, but like when you encounter the inner resistance, how do you start to work with that?
Yeah, well, one of them, as I mentioned, is the inner critic. But that can come up in lots of forms. Many people find fear. Oh, if I'm going to step out and be successful, it's just an emotional thing that comes up of fear. And fear is paralyzing, or it can be. It can motivate or it can paralyze. But many people get stopped by their fear. And that can be because in the past, maybe a traumatic childhood or something in the past has conditioned the nervous system to be careful. And the nervous system goes into kind of a freezing response that indicates fear. That doesn't necessarily mean there's anything to be afraid of, but people get stopped by that. So how do you get your energy going when it freezes up? I mean, a lot of people experience that when they get up to speak in front of a crowd. All of a sudden, they choke up in their throat and they get nervous and their throat closes and their mind races and they can't think of what they're going to say. That's a kind of blockage in the energy that keeps you from being grounded and present and being able to open your mouth and say what you want. So fear is a big one.
So fear is a big one. So how do you turn the resistance into actual motivation?
Well, one technique that we use might seem counterintuitive, but it's to exaggerate the resistance. So every one of us has inside some little kid that had to do something we didn't want to do. We had to go to bed when we were watching our favorite TV show, or, we had to put away the toy when we weren't finished playing with it, or go to our room. And inside we went, I don't want it. So when it comes to doing things we have to do, often we have a little, I don't want a kid in there. And most people just kind of try to shove that down, be quiet, I'm working, and push it to the back. And then the little kid gets stronger, but I don't want it. So instead, we take those subtle little cues. It might be an inner thought or an inner voice, or it might be a body resistance, and exaggerate. So get up and say, I don't want to, and get it out of your system, and then sit down and do it. So when we give those, what we call countercurrents, when we give them some voice, we allow them to move from the unconscious into the conscious mind, be recognized, and released. The energy that we have in them is released, and we can harvest that energy toward our goal.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And Kim, you can do it in quite a fun way to bring the second chakra principle in there, is like kind of exaggerate it and make it playful and fun.
It's a lot of fun, and it's when people really loosen up in the workshop and start laughing and and the idea is to even make a cartoon out of this. Oh, I'm so sad. A cartoon character. I wrote the book with Lion Goodman, who sometimes teaches on shift, and he said, "Oh, it's the back of the hand bad school of acting."
That's a great metaphor. Great. Well, so I'd love for you to share. So the 7 chakras, so the 7 keys are really related to each of the 7 chakras. So maybe now that we've got a bit of the map, like what is the key for manifesting that really helps us connect with the power in each chakra, and maybe talk a little bit about a practice to enhance.
Yeah. So the 7th chakra is where we begin. And the manifestation principle I use there is consciousness creates. So anything that you create, you have to think of it first. Someone created the shirt you're wearing. Well, they had to think of it. They had to conceive of it. So I call that conception. Conception is the sperm and the egg come together. There's very little material substance. It's just information, right? It's just the DNA coming together. And then once we conceive, we start to put flesh on the pattern. And that's sort of the mater, the mother's job, to put flesh on the pattern. You guys recently had a child, so you went through all that, you know? And so we conceive of something, and that's an idea. What's my idea? And I say, we have many ideas. And I go, oh, I'd like to cook that for dinner sometime. It's an arrow I put in the back on a quiver. Oh, I'd like to go to, you know, China sometime, put that in the back. Oh, I'd like to write a book on this sometime. But when we say, today's the day, I'm going to pull out that idea and I'm going to shoot it toward a goal, I have to keep the goal, which doesn't exist in real life yet, here in my mind. I have to see it. And I have to aim toward that target. So the target of a finished book does not exist in reality when I'm first conceiving of it. You know, in real time, I can't show it to you until I've done it, but I can hold that here. I can hold the vision of a successful business. I can hold the vision of the house I'm trying to buy or the relationship I'm looking for. And that begins to direct attention, right? So if you want to hit the target, you got to keep your eye on it. So you keep your mind focused on what are you trying to create? Where are you going? And after you get good at this, I've had just amazing things where I just think of something and then like 2 weeks later, it shows up on my screen, you know? And, you know, like, oh, the last thing was, I thought about who do I want to have published my next book? And I thought, Hay House. And I went online and couldn't find who to send it to. So I just sat down and visualized it. 2 weeks later, they called me out of the blue and said, we want to talk to you about a book. So keeping your mind focused on the target that you're creating in your mind's eye. That's vision vitalizes. So consciousness creates and vision vitalizes. The next thing is conversation catalyzes. So the more you talk about something, you go to a party and you say, oh, I'm working on this and I'm working on that, you're more likely to run into somebody that says, oh, I have the perfect real estate agent that deals in large-scale community properties, or I have the perfect web designer that, you know, can do this platform for you, or I know the perfect coach for you. Because if we talk about it, we are broadcasting our seeds. And that's what it is to broadcast, to, you know, throw all the seeds out on the ground, because not all of them will sprout, but you want to throw a lot of them so you get a good crop. So conversation catalyzes, and we'll get ideas back of, you know, what we want to create. Have you ever thought of this? Well, wow, that's a good idea. And then love launches. When we treat all our relationships with love, you get the best out of people. You get the best relationships. And so, you know, just finding what you want in your heart, what's your deepest desire. We have a beautiful meditation on finding the way to the celestial wishing tree, which is esoteric thing that you find in the old texts on chakras. It's about wishing the deepest desires of your heart and fusing that with your vision, with your intelligence, with your plan, with your communication. So love launches and power produces. We've got...
You got a thing for alliteration here. Is this a little second chakra, you know, adding some fun into it?
I did, yeah. Consciousness creates, vision vitalizes, conversation catalyzes, love launches, power produces, pleasure pleases.
Nice.
So if it's fun, it's pleasing, and matter matters. It
Nice.
matters what we put into our body. It matters when you're building a house that the boards are cut to just the right length and follow the plan. And it matters how we do things. It matters that we put a proper foundation underneath whatever we're building.
Well, I love the way, I mean, it's really fun the way you've laid it out and makes a lot of clear sense. So I'd love for you to just maybe share what might it look like. So let's say you get a new book idea. So how would you go about this? What things you might do to really kind of work this whole manifestation process?
Right. So I get a book idea. I get lots of them. I put them like arrows in my quiver. And then I'll say, you know, the next book I'm going to write is going to be this one. And I pull it out, and the first thing I would do is gather information. well, who else has written a book on this? What else is out there? What kind of research do I need to do? What do I want to say? What's the conception? What would be the outline? Who would be the audience? That's a lot of conceptual work that I have to do, even to know if it's worth writing. So I might discover that, there's 50 books out there already on that topic and none of them are selling. So why should I write one, Or maybe mine would be the one that would sell. I could decide that. Then I begin to imagine. And I used to, when I first started writing, imagine while I was sitting there at the computer, sometimes stuck with writer's block, imagine people coming up and saying, will you sign my book? That there was a finished book that I'm signing. And it's so funny because often people will come up to me with these dog-eared cover, copies and pages folded over and held together with rubber bands. And they're kind of very shyly saying, oh, I hate to bother you, but would you sign my book? And I always laugh because I used to sit there and visualize people asking me to sign the book. That was kind of a finished way that would, so, oh, that means it's finished and it's being read and all that. So
it fits with your vision, vitalizes. So you're energizing your vision with that, with the imagination there.
Exactly. So another person who might be looking for a relationship, for example, somebody just wrote to me about this the other day. She said, do I visualize meeting him or do I visualize walking down the aisle? And I said, no, visualize being happy with him. People can eat, the first two don't necessarily guarantee that you'd be happy. There's plenty of people that walk down the aisle. And so you want to be careful to visualize the point of fulfillment.
Oh, nice.
Sometimes I call it
level. So you're getting the different levels of your being that say yes to that then.
Exactly. And then when you see that, there's a natural moving toward it. So it directs your attention. So if I'm writing a book about, creating on purpose, which is the book on this topic, my attention when I'm in a bookstore or browsing the internet or reading a magazine or whatever is going to go to articles along that line. And if I'm working on a chapter on the heart, I might, gravitate, my attention is going to be called by what I'm focused on. So I'm going to notice things someone else might not notice. I might ignore things that are not, pertinent to what I'm doing. So the vision directs our attention. So, where were we? We were asking the question.
Now we're down to the throat.
Down to the throat. Yeah, so for writing a book, so then I've got to sit down and write. I've got to find the words to express. And of course, my process is I start from the general. I start with an outline, and if it's a certain chapter, I'll do some brainstorming on a big piece of paper and write down words, just ideas that I want to cover, abstract. And then I look at it for a while, and then I start to group the ideas together. Okay, these are all part of one thing, and these ideas are part of another, and this needs to be said before I can explain that. And I start to put it into an order. Because the thing is, the mind is not linear. We kind of conceive of things in a flash of intuition all at once. But in order to manifest, you have to break things down to a linear, I do this, and then I do that, and then I do this. And writing is a very linear process. This sentence follows that sentence. You don't just read a book all at once, like you look at a painting all at once. So it has to be broken down into a linear format to take you from here to there. Mm-hmm. And then I look for the relationships, who are the readers that I want to touch and connect with? Who are the publishers and who's going to work on it? And do I need an editor? And do I want to do interviews with people? Do I need, who's going to design the cover? What ideas do I have? So all of that brings me into the realm of relationships. And for any book, and I just wrote the acknowledgements for the book that just went to the printer the other day. And it was like, oh yeah, all the people that are part of this, hidden people, that the proofreader and the typesetter and all that, to acknowledge those relationships. And of course, I need a schedule to write. I need to do it. I need to, not spend my time on Facebook and actually, sit down and write a certain amount. And, both of us have written books with very busy lives. So, it takes some discipline. And I need to make it fun or I won't stick with it and nobody will like it. And I need to finish it. I need to complete it. I can't send a book to the publisher and say, well, here it is, but I left out the third and fourth chapters because I just didn't feel like it.
That's great. I love the way it makes it really specific when we see how you actually implement this in the writing of a book. And really the same principles apply in whatever realm. So let's talk a little bit about grounding exercises. I know that those are really key, particularly for those folks who are, if they're drawn to the Shift Network, probably are a little more oriented to the upper chakras. We like to hang out in the more unitive, loving spaces, and sometimes the root system can be a little weaker. So no blame, but just kind of acknowledging that that's often the case because we're excited by the new paradigm possibilities. So let's talk about grounding exercises and how people can really embody this on a deep level.
Well, you just said the key word, embody. So all of this mental stuff is one thing, but it's not very embodied. So we need exercises that get us down into our bodies and specifically down into our legs. And so I have grounding exercises that push into, bending and straightening the knees in a certain way that pushes into the ground and actually generates energy because matter is stored energy. And when we push against matter, because we can't penetrate it, that energy turns around and fills up the body. So you can use a wall, you can use, a door jamb, you can push against something solid to actually generate energy in your body. It gives you energy to do things, it brings it down into the body, and it brings it down into the feet. If we're gonna walk our path, many people say to me, well, I don't know where my path is. And I look down and I say, well, you got to be in your feet to walk your path. Mm-hmm. Your feet are what's touching the earth. So really moving the energy downward through the legs, through the hands, from the inside out, a discharging of that, what we carry inside to bring it out into the outer world.
Great. Well, another thing that we mentioned on the page describing today is this relationship between being, doing, and having. And I'd love for you to explore a little bit more about that and expand. How does that connect to the manifesting through your chakras?
Okay, so being, doing, and having are three ways of relating to the world. And we do all three. But most people think, and I say this when I give my lectures, and it's just absolutely universal, these answers. If I only had, I leave it blank, and the audience says, more money. That's why they say time, then I could do, and people say what I want, I could take a vacation, I could go back to school, and then I would be, and universally everybody says happy. Or they might say, if I only could do this, then I would have that. If I only could go back to school, then I would have a better paying job, and then I would be happy. Well, we turn it around and we say, go to the being first. What do you have to be, or how do you have to be in order to do and have what you want? And I'll give you an example for myself in writing. To write a book, I have to be focused. I'm not a very focused person. I'm actually not a very disciplined person. People might say, really? Because I've written 9 books and raised 4 kids and, done it all. But I'm not. I have to create that in my being. So I have to create being focused in order to do the writing of a book, in order to have the finished book and all that goes with that, which is the traveling career and the teaching and all that. So, if you want to be a successful yoga teacher, you might have to be knowledgeable, peaceful. If you want a successful relationship, you might have to be loving. So we start with, what do you have to be, or how do you have to be in order to do and have what you want, and create that first.
Nice. I think that's a really great reorientation there.
Because if you're not going to be focused, you're not going to do it, no matter how much you want to.
Good. Well, it's and another thing we mentioned that we talk about today has to do with aligning vision and purpose and desire. So I think you've touched on it in terms of like doing working with the entire central channel, but like this process of aligning sort of your vision with your kind of second chakra, pleasures, and your higher purpose. And when you get all those things really resonant, then it's much easier to manifest.
Well, I like to say it this way. A vision without a plan is nothing but a daydream. Mm-hmm. But action without vision can be a nightmare. So we want to connect our action and vision. So it comes from the planning, it comes from the thinking. There's a specific order to it when we go top down. You don't know what to do unless you've seen the path. So we figure out what to do. I have an exercise where we actually project into the future to the finish point, imagine ourselves there and look backwards and say, so what did I do to get here? Mm-hmm. And then write it down. So it's, seeing your way back from the future, I call it. And then you say, oh, well, before I got there, I did this. And before I got there, I did that. And write down all those things and start to put them in a logical, linear order, because we can really only do one or two things at a time. So that's connecting the vision to the action. And when you start moving things into place, take a little bit of action every day, it will start to develop momentum. And I think at the second chakra and the movement of water and the movement of passion as that momentum. And passion tends to come up for people when they're starting to get a little bit of return on their manifestation. So for me, it's, February, springtime, I go out in my garden, see what I planted in the fall and go, oh, look, there's little sprouts coming up. Or if I'm writing a book and I don't know if it's going anywhere, I take a couple chapters to a friend and they read it and they say, oh, that's great. That feedback, then I get excited. Or somebody has their first customers, or they get their first review on Amazon, or, they finally get a part in a play, or they finally get the loan they're looking for to start their business. Some little return that generates passion and even more momentum. And that's when it's time that the river is flowing. It's the time to really roll up our sleeves and say, okay, now I got some movement going. Let me really go with it.
So a lot of this, it does boil down to like getting energy flowing and moving. So it's like the kinetic quality really helps the manifestation process. So when you've got things internally flowing and externally flowing through actions and juiciness, it's just more can happen.
And movements and exercises, just getting the energy going in your body. And the thing is about embodiment is the blocks we hold in our body. Mm-hmm. So when people have that self-doubt, they also have a feeling in the gut that grips like a stone. So when we can release some of those things in the body, the blocks that are in the chakras, then this energy can move all the way down without hitting mm-hmm. resistance.
Mm-hmm. One thing you've talked about in the past too, it's also not just, I didn't want to say it's all about just moving bigger energy. It's also optimizing too. So sometimes you can have chakras that are like too much energy, right?
Right. I call them excessive. And, when you go to talk to somebody about getting a loan in the bank for your business, you don't want to tell them all about your personal life and you don't want to talk their ear off. People are busy. You want to be concise. You want to be clear. If I'm writing a book, I can't put everything in it. People aren't going to read it. I have to say, what do I eliminate? So sometimes it's a process of elimination. And the thing is, up here, there's no limitations in consciousness. Down here on the earth plane, there's lots of limitations. There's limitations of time and money and space. So part of the process of manifestation is condensing, and part of it is eliminating and honing and saying, all right, this doesn't go with it, this doesn't go with it. And then you get down to something that is actually tangible.
Well, let's talk, anything else that you're sort of feeling like areas that, you're responding to my questions really well, but any other areas that you want to make sure to cover today that I haven't asked you about?
Well, there's one thing I want to talk about, and that is resistance. Because most people get stuck on their resistance. Now, when we're going from a freer plane to a denser plane, like a meteor that's going through outer space and then it hits the atmosphere, the atmosphere of the Earth, that's denser than the vacuum of space. And then it goes through the atmosphere and it hits the water of the ocean. Well, the water's denser than the air, and it goes through that into the Earth. So as we come down from these abstract planes into manifestation, each lower plane is a little bit denser than the one above it. So we experience resistance. It's a natural part of the process. And if we embrace that resistance, we can use it to actually move ourselves through. Resistance is an important slowing down so that we hone things into more specific, more tighter, planned, defined spaces, and that helps manifest things.
Great, Anodea. Well, what I really love about your overall approach is how integrated it is, how embodied it is, how much it mirrors our full system, and then really works compassionately with all levels. And I think it also illuminates part of what differentiates you from more kind of like one-trick pony manifestation methods, which are, you know, you see everywhere you go on the internet these days, like manifest this, manifest that, and a lot of them really don't have the sophistication. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more about just what do you see as this approach to manifestation? What differentiates it from some of the kind of more singular methods, if you will?
Yeah, it's too bad because that airy-fairy stuff kind of gives manifestation a bad name. You know, people don't really take it seriously. And then they discount it out of hand, but they still don't know how to manifest. So the thing about this is it's a step-by-step plan that goes all the way down to the earth plane. That go and no, it's not just like our chakras are doing it for us. It's the chakras provide the map. They provide the template. You know, the meaning and location of the chakras provides the template and the energy to do it with, but it's really a map. So most people don't have all 7 steps. And even the steps within the steps, you know, each of the chakras has several steps to it. So they're not finishing. It's like, oh, I can design the house, but I don't know how to build it. And I don't have any cement for the foundation. It was Henry David Thoreau said, castles in the air are just fine, but you got to put a foundation under them. So I think the difference in this method is it really helps you with the blockages that naturally arise anytime you go to manifest something. Gives you concrete tools to address those blockages that you can use for the rest of your life. You know, you're in a bad mood on the way to a meeting, you just sort of in the car go, oh, I don't want to go to this meeting. You exaggerate it, you create an intention, I'm going to be present for the meeting. And you have a simple exercise you can do even while you're driving to change your attitude so that you arrive at the meeting ready to go. So it's concrete tools to address the natural resistances and obstacles that arise and a working it step by step by step down into the realm of manifestation and completion.
It's really clear why it works so much more effectively when you really lay out all those elements so clearly. Well,
and I've had students manifest things I didn't think were possible.
What are some the most exciting stories that you've had of people manifesting cool?
Oh, one person was, you know, wanting to buy a house. She had no money for a down payment, but she affirmed she was going to do it in 6 months. She worked the whole manifestation process. 3 months later, I got a housewarming invitation from her. She'd bought a house.
Wow.
People have found their true loves. One person I ran into 6 months later, she says, oh my God, the manifestation is happening so fast, I can't even keep up with it. She wanted to turn her barn into an art studio. And she said, people are coming all over wanting to rent the studio for events. And I got to hire somebody. And she says, I never thought this was possible. It's just going on its own. So once you really work this, and you've got to work each and every step. That's the thing. You can't skip any. You can't skip a chakra and still get all the way down to the earth.
This is a great reminder, and I love the stories. And I know that ultimately it's all of these dreams and visions that we're manifesting personally that ultimately accrue to creating a whole new planet, and that's what you're really in service to. So it's like when we not only are visioning for our own lives, but ultimately for our whole society, that's when we can really leave a legacy of great goodness.
Absolutely. And I think one of the main things wrong, right? Everyone's talking about what's wrong right now, which is pretty easy to point to, but there's no articulation of the vision. And so, we get what we get if we don't have a vision of what we want.
So we each have to create our own visions and get better and better at manifesting them. So this is a great opportunity now to talk about your upcoming program, Manifesting Through the Chakras, which we're very excited to be partnering with you again on, because we're in the business of creating change. Both inner change and outer change is shifting our world. It's built into our brand, and I think your technology of how to do that is one of the most integrated, balanced, and holistic ways to do it. So we're very excited that you're offering this program again. And folks who are online right now, you can find it at manifestingthroughchakras.com. That's just as it sounds, manifesting through, T-H-R-O-U-G-H, chakras, C-H-A-K-R-A-S.com. And it's going to be a 7-week program that really takes people much more systematically and thoroughly through this practice. So you really take your whatever vision that you're working on creating and you work it through this process. So you learn through one cycle how to do it and really the practices of support, but then you're able to do it again and again for whatever you want to manifest in the future. So that's why it's a great program, because it keeps the ripple effect goes far down the road in your life. So I'd love for you to share in your own words what people are going to be learning with you in this journey and what they're going to be taking home with them.
Well, so 7 weeks gives us one module for each week. And so we will work the manifestation principles: consciousness creates, vision vitalizes, conversation catalyzes, as I outlined before. And in each one, we will, work on exercises that actually ignite and open up that chakra. We'll look at all the properties that are related to it and how those properties relate to manifestation. So how do you court your connection with spirit? How do you ask for the guidance that you want? What do you do to make space for that in your life? What kind of meditation practices will open you to that kind of guidance? How do you work with beliefs and limiting beliefs? And how do you eliminate limiting beliefs that get in your way and create more positive beliefs? So in the 6th chakra, Vision Vitalizes, we'll be really honing our vision and looking especially at what's your life purpose. There's a lot of talk these days about purpose work. We want to do purposeful work, and that's why I call it creating on purpose. Not only creating deliberately, but creating in line with our life purpose. So how do we divine? Many people don't really know what their life purpose is. So we do some work around that, and then create a vision as a vehicle to take you to your life purpose, and how to really acknowledge the obstacles and decide what tools are necessary to remove them. And then when we come to the 5th chakra, the conversation catalyzes. It's really honing how you speak. It's getting rid of the inner critic and actually purging that out of you so you can harness its help rather than have it stop you. What are the kind of ways that you can craft your sales pitch, your elevator pitch, your brand? We take people into finding the relationships and actually creating a dream team where they have support. We have exercises in the 3rd chakra to clear the will and energize your 3rd chakra to stay on track, to make a plan. We have lots of fun exercises in the 2nd chakra, brainstorming how to make things fun for each other, and then really keeping each other on task week after week with, people, I did this and this is what happened. By this time, people are starting to manifest, and then finding all the steps we need to make to complete and making commitment to taking those steps.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate how systematically you've created this program so that people can not just learn some inspiring things, but actually manifest what they're here to manifest that's truly in alignment with their deeper soul's code. So it's a great gift to be able to do this program, both to yourself and ultimately to your community, because when you learn to manifest your dreams, especially the ones that are really aligned with your higher purpose, it's like you're going to be creating a lot of magic for people around you. I mean, I think everything that's gone into creating the Shift Network, I just got the original download in a meditation retreat, crown chakra opened up, had to coalesce business plans and vision. It took some time. It took a long time to get it off the ground, but now we've touched, millions of people around the world. So it's worth doing, it's worth investing in, so that everybody really feels that they are here to contribute what they are most aligned to contribute on a soul level. And so this gives people a roadmap for how to do it. So I'll mention a few other things. First of all, this is a video class, so you get live streaming video with Anodea, which is really helpful because it creates more rapport and connection, and really makes it more playful and fun too. And you can see some of the practices and exercises and embodiment practices that she works with. You get, you also have the 7 90-minute classes. You get the video recordings and audio recordings and transcripts of all of those sessions, which is really helpful for you. You can go back and you can see things that you might have missed. It can be sometimes more convenient to read through a transcript than to watch a whole video again. You also get time in small group practice sessions at the end of each class. That can be a really important way that you're working with the material, that you're sharing it, you're talking about how you're applying it, really part of action learning. And then we have an online learning community on Facebook. We also have the recordings, as I said, in the video and MP3s, as well as the transcripts. So the course begins on February 27th, so it's coming up soon, on Tuesdays at 5 Pacific time. And there's a number of great bonuses that complement the core value of the program. Anodea is always very generous on this front. So she has a first bonus, which you again can find at manifestingthroughchakras.com. Again, that's manifestingthroughchakras.com. The first bonus is a visual presentation on the 7 steps to manifesting your true life purpose. There's another one with Lion, who she mentioned earlier, a co-writer of the book Creating on Purpose, called Delete the Beliefs That Defeat You. So Lion has a deeper thread of work around specific belief technologies and shifting those and eliminating those. And so that's a dialogue between the two of them. You want to share anything else about that, Anodea?
Oh, Lion is just brilliant in working with beliefs. That's been, the main thrust of his work. And, you get really stuck if you've got limiting beliefs in there and you don't root them out. So we're going to work with his material in the 7th chakra, and that interview gives you an exposure to Lion and a sort of an understanding of how beliefs influence everything we manifest.
We also have a third bonus from Harville Hendricks and Anodea in dialogue. Harville is one of the most renowned experts on relationships. So this is about creating thriving relationships with the chakras. So when we're talking about manifestation, it doesn't always mean a business or a book. It can be like the dream relationship. And in fact, it's also important for both for the heart, the 4th and the 2nd chakra, to be really having healthy relationships as part of whatever dream you're manifesting, and whatever vision you're manifesting, because without that, you can get kind of all dried up and you have resistance because you're just feeling like too burnt out. And so the relationships help to keep everything juicy and alive and loving as you're creating what you're creating. So that's a great dialogue bonus. And we also have one extra bonus that's available only today. This is between Anodea and Sean Korn. Sean Korn is one of the most foremost yoga teachers in the world, and really one of the best at bridging the practice on the mat with the service off the mat. And so this is called Getting Charged Up Through Service. Sean is a great inspiration, brings people around the world. And I know this is at the heart of what you really want to bring your gift and service to the world, Anodea, to really put this into action. And once we're good at it, really going beyond our lives to how do we shift the world? And so share a little more about that bonus, which is available till midnight tonight.
Well, Sean Korn is just such an inspiration. She's one of my heroes, or sheroes. She does so much, raising money to go to forlorn places and make a difference. She works against sex trafficking and goes into places that have been ravaged by, hurricanes or tsunamis or whatever, and she takes people into service work. And so she's just amazing in what she does. I don't know how she manages it all, but that's why I interviewed her.
So that's a special bonus when you sign up by midnight tonight. It's our little thank you gift to you for signing up right away, and it gives you an excuse to go to the page at manifestingthroughchakras.com and give it a read through. And I encourage you to just tune in with your body and tune in with your energy centers. And if you're getting a click or a yes, or like, oh, this feels true and I want to move forward on this and be a better manifester, because ultimately being a better manifester is about doing everything in your life. Like whether you want to create a relationship or a house or a job or a company or a book or a movement, it's all ultimately sourced in these skills. So these give you a core deep set of skills and practices that you can apply to whatever it is that you're really trying to create in the world. So again, you can see all the details at manifestingthroughchakras.com. It starts on the 27th, and we've kept it very reasonable investment. It's just 3 payments of $109, or you can save 10% when you pay in full with $297. So a lot of value in the full 7-week program. You can see at manifestingthroughchakras.com some amazing testimonials from people who have been through the program in the past. As Anodea says, people go through this program and don't just get inspired, but they actually make stuff happen. And that's ultimately what we want to do, and to do so in a way that has heart and meaning and integrity and helps us keep recharged. That's the other thing, is that a lot of the ways we inherited this kind of Puritan, hard-driving, self-sacrificing ethic, which often leads to burnout. And I think your method, Anodea, really prevents burnout and allows you to kind of do things in a juicy, loving, vitalized way.
And with support from other people.
That's a great other point. Yeah, so you have a whole community of support. We get an international group and people all around the country who are doing this program together and inspiring each other with their stories of success too.
So I would say, if someone has something they want to create, if they've been stuck in bringing their vision into being, if they get stuck in doing anything, or they just want to even find out what their dream is, to dream a little bigger, this would be the course. If people are in a place of transition, that's a wonderful time to take it. Like, you know, I know one person who wants to sign up, she's just ending her career of retirement. Now what is she going to do with the rest of her life? She wants to take this to say, well, now what's my purpose? So if you're in transition and you're wondering, if you've got a dream, you want to just muscle all the way down to the earth, or if you just want to be inspired by others, then this is a really good course for you.
Well, it's really clear that you have a great passion for what you're doing, that you are manifesting on purpose and aligned with your chakras, because you're always radiant and happy and very juiced up to share what you know about how to do this well. So it's a great gift that you're offering this program. So we know people are going to get a lot of value and really feel blessed by it. So again, you can find all the details on Anodea's 7-week Manifesting Through the Chakras program at manifestingthroughchakras.com. And anything you just want to say directly to the folks out there who are considering joining?
You know, come, let's learn how to create together. Let's turn that trajectory of higher consciousness, harness that higher consciousness we spent decades pursuing, and bring it down. The earth needs it, the society needs it, the world needs it. We're in a time of massive transformation. Let's roll up our sleeves and create heaven on earth.
Amen. Amen, sister. All right. Well, thank you, Anodea, for a beautiful hour together. And thank you all for joining us. And let's go do it. Let's create heaven on earth together and do it with a lot of joy. All right.
All right. Thanks, Stephen.
Looking forward to it. And again, one last time, you can sign up for Anodea's program at manifestingthroughchakras.com. And you get the special bonus with Sean Korn when you sign up by the end of today. All right. Thanks, Anodea. Bye, all.